All right, guys, forgive my tired voice. I just woke up, but I needed to give you some news that broke last night. Cops stood outside the school while the killer rampaged inside. Onlookers yelled at them to go in. They didn't. One parent urged bystanders, let's rush in because the cops aren't doing anything like they are supposed to. This is from the Associated Press. It's about the mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas this week. Listen to this. Onlookers urged police to charge into Texas school. Uvalde, Texas. Frustrated onlookers urged police officers to charge into the Texas elementary school where a gunman's rampage killed 19 children and 2 teachers, witnesses said Wednesday, as investigators worked to track the massacre that lasted upwards of 40 minutes and ended when the 18-year-old shooter was killed by a Border Patrol team. Go in there, go in there. Nearby women shouted at the officers soon after the attack began, said Juan Carranza, 24 years old, who saw the scene from outside his house across the street from Robb Elementary School in the close-knit town of Uvalde. Carranza said the officers did not go in. Javier Cazares, whose 4th-grade daughter, Jacqueline Cazares, was killed in the attack, said he raced to the school when he heard about the shooting, arriving while police were still gathered outside the building. Upset that the police were not moving in, he raised the idea of charging into the school with several other bystanders. Quote, "Let's just rush in because the cops aren't doing anything like they are supposed to," he said. "More could have been done. They were unprepared," he added. Minutes earlier, Carranza had watched as Salvador Ramos crashed his truck into a ditch outside the school, grabbed his AR-15-style semi-automatic rifle, and shot at 2 people outside a nearby funeral home who ran away uninjured. Officials say he encountered a school district security officer outside the school, though there were conflicting reports from authorities on whether the men exchanged gunfire. After running inside, he fired on 2 arriving Uvalde police officers who were outside the building, said Texas Department of Public Safety spokesperson Travis Considine. The police officers were injured. After entering the school, Ramos charged into one classroom and began to kill. He barricaded himself by locking the door and just started shooting children and teachers that were inside that classroom, Lieutenant Christopher Olivares of the Department of Public Safety told CNN. It just shows you the complete evil of the shooter. All those killed were in the same classroom, he said. Department of Public Safety Director Steve McCraw told reporters that 40 minutes to an hour elapsed from when Ramos opened fire on the school security officer to when the tactical team shot him, though a department spokesman said later that they could not give a solid estimate of how long the gunman was in the school or when he was killed. The reason why they could not give an estimate is because they're trying to cover their own ass. The bottom line is law enforcement was there, McCraw said. They did engage immediately. They did contain Ramos in the classroom. They say they're describing this. The cops are describing this as, we contained Ramos in the classroom. You didn't contain him anywhere. He ran in there with a gun, was massacring children and the teachers, and you guys waited outside because you were too scared to go in and risk your own lives. Meanwhile, a law enforcement official familiar with the investigation said the Border Patrol agents had trouble breaching the classroom door and had to get a staff member to open the room with a key. The official spoke on the condition of anonymity because he was not authorized to speak publicly about the ongoing investigation. Carranza said the officer should have entered the school sooner. Quote, "There were more of them. There was just one of him," he said. This is astonishing. This is, every single one of these officers should be fired today. And that's at best they should be fired. In reality, they should be brought up on charges. They are complicit in this murder. Some very high percentage of the taxes in Uvalde go to the police department. And then when the police department is most needed, they're nowhere to be found. You know, the timeline previously, before we learned about this, the timeline previously didn't really make sense, did it? Because we heard that the shooter tried to kill his grandma and shot her in the head. As far as I know, as of right now of this recording, she's not dead. She was taken to a hospital. Then the shooter got into a car and tried to speed off. Then the shooter crashed the car, got out of the car, walked about a football field away to the school, entered, and started killing kids and teachers in the classroom. Now, what we had heard is police were in pursuit of him, which is why he crashed the car. But then if police were in pursuit of him while he crashed the car, why is it that he was able to get into the school in the first place and certainly stay in the school for 40 minutes to an hour? And now we have our answer. By the way, there was also an armed security guard at the school. And there's conflicting reports as to whether or not there was shooting between the shooter and the security guard. But the shooter ended up getting into the school anyway. And then you had police officers. Guys, the story gets worse. The story gets worse because there's now video outside of the school. When everybody heard there was a shooting going on, the cops set up a perimeter and tried to keep the parents back to the point where they had to restrain some of them and even had their tasers out. And in the video, you see all these police officers creating a perimeter, wearing tactical gear, and holding high-tech weaponry. And none of them went inside. Now, the reason why a Border Patrol agent was the one who ended up going inside, getting the door unlocked, and then taking out the shooter, is because this town is about 75 miles from the border, and there are a lot of Border Patrol agent families that live there. So it was probably a parent of one of the kids who ended up doing it. But the cops were standing outside and setting up a perimeter, and not only not going in themselves, they were preventing parents who wanted to go in to rush the shooter, even though the parents were unarmed, by the way. Your whole job, if you're a police officer, is this moment right here. We want you to stop violent crime from happening. And then you're presented with a situation where it's your time to shine, and you cower. Now, I don't want to hear, they were saying, oh, we need to wait for SWAT team. Well, SWAT team didn't even end up taking him out. It was a Border Patrol agent who took him out. And why do you need to wait for a SWAT team when you're decked out in all your tactical gear? They waited for 40 minutes to an hour outside of the school as the shooting was going on inside the classroom, and they pretended, no, we have him barricaded inside the room. You don't have him barricaded inside the room. He barricaded himself inside the room so he could take innocent life after innocent life after innocent life. Every single one of these police officers should be fired today. And they should hang their head in shame. And it's honestly worse than that, because like I said, it's not just that they should be fired. I'm waiting for the lawsuits. Now, I don't know if there's any criminal charges that can be filed against the cops. I hope there are. But at the very least, there should be civil lawsuits against the cops, and they should get the pants sued off of them, and every single one of those parents should get millions and millions and millions of dollars for what they had to witness. This was a tragedy that was absolutely preventable. From the armed guard out in front of the school, to the police officers being there and then waiting for 40 minutes to an hour because they're too cowardly to go in and risk their own lives. You know, somebody made a good point on Twitter. They were like, well, what do you expect? We've told police officers for decades and decades now that they're special. They're special. They're precious. They occupy, this pedestal above us all in society because they're our protectors. And so if you tell them they're special, they're special, they're special, and the training has now changed to, look, just make sure we get home at the end of the day. Well, then what do you expect is going to happen? Here you have a situation where to do their job, they'd have to risk their lives, and they're like, well, screw that, I'm not doing that. This is beyond pathetic. This is beyond pathetic. There's no punishment that's too strong for these cops. Because they signed up for this, guys. You signed up for this. If you're sitting there going, well, I wouldn't rush into that school. Okay, but you didn't sign up to be a police officer now, did you? Incredible. Sarah Zhang says, she's a journalist, what the fuck is going on with the police scanner archive and the missing 18 minutes of audio? Has anyone figured out what the hell is happening there? Like, someone please tell me it's completely normal and okay for the Uvalde police scanner archive to skip from 11:52 a.m. to 12:10 p.m. Would you look at that? 18 minutes of missing audio right in the heart of when the shooting is happening. It's almost like they have stuff in that audio that they don't want anybody to hear. It's almost like they were saying back and forth to each other things along the line of, I don't want to go in there. This guy's crazy. He's got body armor. And by the way, he didn't actually have body armor. He had what looked like body armor, but it turns out it was like a decoy and he didn't have body armor. But even if he did, it shouldn't matter. Get the fuck in there. So they cut out the audio so you wouldn't know how cowardly and pathetic they are. They sat outside with their tactical gear and weapons as the parents had to sit there thinking maybe my child is being murdered right now, and they wouldn't even let the parents rush in to stop it. It was all because of a Border Patrol agent. It wasn't even the SWAT team that ended up taking this guy out. They were waiting for a SWAT team. It was a Border Patrol agent who ended up doing it. Every single one of these police officers should be fired. Every last one of them. And again, that's best case scenario for them. That's just society being kind to them. Really, there should be criminal charges. If you can't find criminal charges, civil lawsuits and sue the pants off of them. Holy shit. Holy shit. All right, this is a different story that we'll get to, but this is unconscionable, man. This is unconscionable. They had an armed guard. They had the quote-unquote good guys with a gun right there, and the shooting still happened. So we'll get to the response from the right in terms of what they think are solutions, and I've never seen a more deranged gaggle of idiots. So we'll get to that, but shame on this police department. Every one of them should be fired. They should be sued. If there can be charges that are pressed against them, they should be pressed against them. It is because of the actions of those police officers that those kids are dead. And they had the nerve in the press conferences afterwards and in their statement to the public to obfuscate about the timeline, what went down, how it went down, and what they did. When the anger was palpable among the parents and bystanders and onlookers. They knew what the cops were doing. They knew they were being cowardly. By the way, this is against their own procedures. Ever since Columbine, you're supposed to engage as soon as possible if there's a school shooter. Of course! And they didn't. They set up a perimeter and held the parents back. Shame on all of them. This is beyond pathetic.